The next one is, I would have this one farther towards the bottom than sort of creeping towards the middle of the pack, only for the fact that we didn't get to see his regeneration. And that's because partially of the BBC and partially because of Colin Baker. Now, what happened at the end of his final season was they put the show on hiatus. They weren't sure if they were going to continue it after the Sixth Doctor because the ratings were so bad. So his final episode, which was the fantastically done, and I implore everybody to watch, season-long story arc, The Trial of the Time Lord. Watch it. It really is fantastic. But at the end of it, they just assumed he was coming back as the Doctor for a third season. Well, after taking an 18-month break, they decided they wanted to sort of on-the-fly reboot the show. So they hired somebody new to play the Doctor and sort of changed the whole thing, made it much more 80s, best way to put it. And they offered him a little mini part to come back and shoot a regeneration scene, but he didn't want to do it. He was mad that they weren't going to let him continue to be the Doctor, and he has since said that he kind of regrets doing that now because he realizes the importance of handing the part off. So we never really got to see him regenerate. What they did with the Seventh Doctor is they had Sylvester McCoy kind of lay down with his back turned to the camera, wearing Colin Baker's little rainbow outfit, regenerating. So I get why the author has the Sixth Doctor there, but we never really got to see Colin Baker regenerate. I don't agree with this one being so low because most people have all of Jodie Whittaker's stuff so far down, and I cannot stand the fact that they do, because she honestly, and people can disagree with me, that's fine, she didn't get a fair shake, and she really, really was fantastic as the Doctor. Her final season, that season-long Flux season, was good. It was great. Kind of left some open questions about her being the original the original Time Lord, I guess, for lack of a the person that brought the ability to regenerate to the Time Lords is the best way to put it. And she did get a good regeneration scene where, of course, we all now know that she regenerated into David Tennant's 14th Doctor. But I don't understand why people pan. I've talked a lot on this podcast about it. She really did do a wonderful job. And I'm wondering, thinking now, because Jodie Whittaker and even Ncuti Gatwa's versions of the Doctor, and it even started kind of in Peter Capaldi's, that people were sort of getting tired a little bit of Doctor Who. They didn't want it to go away, but they really wanted it just to be David Tennant or Matt Smith. I think that might be what it is, but I could totally be wrong. But as far as Jodie Whittaker goes, she was a damn good Doctor, and I wish people could go back and watch her episodes again without the preconceived notion, just to see how dedicated and great she was in the role. The Seventh Doctor kind of like Colin Baker's, as the TV show was on, he didn't get a regeneration scene because when his final season ended in 1989, they kind of had an idea that the BBC was going to cancel it, but they didn't know for sure. They were already starting to plan a 27th season when they found out that the show was canceled. But one thing Sylvester McCoy did do was he agreed to come back for the TV movie we talked about at the beginning in 1996 and play a cameo at the beginning where he regenerates into the Eighth Doctor. So he didn't really get the send-off speech that all the doctors got. He got a small one at the beginning of that movie before he regenerated into Paul McGann. But as far as the epic doctor speech that modern Who viewers are used to when one actor hands things over to the other, he didn't really get a big one. Got more than Colin Baker did, but Colin Baker probably could have got one if he'd agreed to regenerate into the Seventh Doctor. But I digress. The Ninth Doctor is a tricky one in this countdown because the story goes, and I don't know if there's a ton of truth to this, that initially Russell Davies wanted to hire David Tennant as the Doctor when he relaunched the show. But David Tennant wasn't available, so they went to their second choice and hired Christopher Eccleston. Well, during his one and only season, they learned that David Tennant was now available, so Russell Davies decided to hire him as the Doctor for the following season. So understandably, Christopher Eccleston wasn't happy about only getting 1 year in the part. But unlike other disgruntled actors, Colin Baker I just talked about, he agreed and he was professional enough to do a regeneration scene at the end of his one and only season. And it was a good regeneration where he did have sort of that little speech that we all hear in modern Doctor Who, sending off his incarnation of the Doctor to the next one. And you know what? We all got the line, "It was fun." And you know what? You were fantastic. So was I. I got that completely backed up. But you know what I mean. The next one is an interesting one because it's not really more about the Fifth Doctor than it is about the Sixth Doctor. And when Peter Davison regenerated into Colin Baker, their plans were to make the show take it away from what it had been up until that point. At that point, as I talked about, they did episodes or serials that were anywhere from 2 to 10 parts long, and they were all 22-minute episodes. Well, when they regenerated the Fifth Doctor into the Sixth Doctor, their plans for production were to have the Sixth Doctor do just 2-part episodes, but they were going to be 45 minutes long. So like double the length. So technically they were still 4 parts, just 2 of them were crammed together. And the other thing is they were planning on having the Doctor become a much darker character with the Sixth Doctor. And initially started that way with Colin Baker over his first couple of episodes. But after that, I think they realized that the fans weren't enjoying that. So they sort of gave him a little bit of an attitude, but sort of eased off on the darkness, like him trying to choke his companion, Perry. So they kind of backed away from all of that. But as far as the regeneration goes, it was nothing really all that special that I remember, just your standard 70s and 80s regeneration. I don't understand why they have the War Doctor regeneration so high up in the list to be in like the top quarter, because the War Doctor of all of the doctors has the least amount of screen time, because he was only in the special and did a couple of BBC YouTube shorts, and that was all he was in it. So total screen time for the War Doctor really is what, a half an hour at the most, maybe an hour, and that's pushing it. And you got to see his sort of regeneration at the end of the 35th anniversary special, which was kind of just handing things off to John Hurt, regenerating into Christopher Eccleston, setting up the whole 2005 rebirth. So I don't understand why, other than the War Doctor is mixed in with the story of the war between Gallifrey and the Daleks. Maybe? I don't know. As you might expect, the top 5 really isn't going to be too much of a surprise for anybody. The first Doctor, of course, set the stage for regeneration when William Hartnell didn't want to return to the role and had agreed to sort of handpick his predecessor, his successor. I said predecessor. And he did like the fact that they picked Patrick Troughton, because it was going to be a totally different Doctor. And he did a good job sort of selling the regeneration, even though we only had stills of him regenerating because the BBC and their vaunted logic destroyed a lot of the episodes from the 1960s. So we only have the audio and some animation episodes that have survived. But he did set the stage, so I get why he's number 5. Number 4 is the 11th Doctor, and this one kind of surprises me a little bit that he wouldn't be 2 or 1. But we'll get to that in a minute, because the show was at an all-time high when Matt Smith decided to leave and hand things over to Peter Capaldi. I don't think the ratings were any higher or lower at the point of him being the Doctor. People still love to sit down and watch them each and every week. So him handing the reins over to the next Doctor, and he did have one of the most grandiose speeches for his regeneration. So I'm a little shocked that this is at 4. Not surprised it's in the top 5, but I thought it would be 2 or 1. At number 3 is the 4th Doctor, and I said this a long time ago when I ranked the Doctors in my personal preference, that Tom Baker is so iconic as the Doctor that he gets a lot more credit than, I don't want to say he doesn't deserve, because he does deserve it, but he gets more credit than maybe he should. And that's because he played the role for 7 years, and most other than John Pertwee, played it 3 years or less. So I get his regeneration into Peter Davison's 6th or 5th Doctor was iconic because the immortal, for lack of a better phrase, Tom Baker was leaving the show and handing it over to a younger actor. As far as his regeneration goes, it wasn't really anything special, and he didn't really have a speech other than a few words at the very end. So, but I'm not surprised it's at number 3. The number 2 one is the 12th Doctor. And you see in the picture that they included, which I'm assuming why they have it at 2 was because they did that cool special of incorporating the first Doctor with Peter Capaldi's Doctor just before he regenerated. And that was very cool that they did that. As far as the significance of his regeneration goes, it's more that for the first time, the Doctor regenerated into a woman than he actually did regenerate. And he did have, however might be campy, did have a good speech before he regenerated, and he did interact with the first Doctor before he regenerated. So I guess that's probably why they had him at number 2. I would have had it more down sort of in the middle, but it is important, at least to me and some other fans, that he did regenerate into the first female Doctor. And of course, at number 1, nobody is surprised. The current modern day favorite. If it's not Tom Baker, it's definitely going to be David Tennant. And his regeneration into Matt Smith did seamlessly hand the show off from one actor to the other. So, in that aspect, it didn't lose any steam going from David Tennant to Matt Smith. I'm guessing they loved the story, The End of Time, parts 1 and 2, which brought in Rassilon and a bunch of the old Time Lords along with the Master. That part was great. The story was really, really great. And of course, we got the now iconic line that he continues to use to this day. I don't want to go. Which we've learned that since he's returned twice again, he didn't really want to go. That was the actor saying it, not the Doctor. So there is your article ranking of the Doctor's regenerations from Doctor Who. As a whole, what can I say about it? I can agree with certain aspects of it. I thought the second Doctor was the most important regeneration in the entirety of the series because it just set in motion so much canon that the Doctor Who universe still lives by 55 years later. So I don't get that, but it is what it is. So there you have it. Here's my 2 cents about that article. I would really love to hear everybody's thoughts about what they think about the article, or maybe you totally disagree about what I think about it. So leave me a comment wherever it is you're watching or listening to this episode. And as usual, I don't have a closer for this podcast, so I'll simply close with Allons-y.